Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Association of College and University Housing Officers International Session. I'm delighted today to join you from wherever you are and to introduce my colleagues. Pete Galloway, the sitting president of ACUHO-I, Matt Nelson, the global director of the ACUHO-I Executive Board, and Grant Walters, the director of educational programming. So I'd like you each to share your perspective of how ACUHO-I has contributed to the inclusive and equitable lifelong learning opportunities. Pete, do you want to take this one?
Sure, Mary, thank you. Building on the work that we did back last year as the pandemic hit all around the world, we followed up with that this year with some work on advocating for staff, particularly res life and housing staff, as well as others, particularly those who live in and were the frontline contacts with the students that we have living on our campuses around PPE and around vaccinations. We also provided developed some information around transferable skills that res life and housing folks have that could be very useful to other parts of the institution, which were really highlighted during the pandemic.
Thanks, Pete. Grant, from a staff perspective, from the perspective of how we are sharing this knowledge through our educational programming, can you talk a little bit about that, both education and the research that we're doing?
We've done an almost constant slate of programming, from webinars and virtual roundtables to symposia to institutes. Each of them reaching out to different populations of our membership, and some of them that we haven't done in the past. So we've been really conscious of making sure that we are attuning to needs of different facets of our membership. We have also been very committed to making the profession a little bit more research oriented. Homegrown research that ACUHO-I has been a part of has been critical. Typically, housing has relied on research from other facets of student affairs, from other areas of like professions. So one of the important things that we've done is ramped up our supported and funded research opportunities. And so our members have had the ability to really be a part of shaping information and benchmarking and research that they can access and utilize in a very practical way. So we've been really proud of that. We're also now currently revamping our professional standards and our core competencies. It's an essential part of lifelong learning for our membership as well, because it's the way that people can ascertain how well they're progressing in their housing programs, how they as professionals are progressing, and how they are meeting certain qualities and requirements and standards to perpetuate a positive experience for students on campus.
Matt, I'm going to shift over to you, and Matt is joining us from Qatar. Matt, we have a global network, a global membership, members in 23 different countries. Can you talk a little bit about how we are reaching the school with our members outside of the United States?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I think, one of the things we're looking at doing in the near future is an ambassador program where we're really looking at specific countries, specific regions that may want to be involved more, both at a local level, but also contributing to the global conversation as well. And this all contributes and creates the ecosystem, the infrastructure for lifelong learning and continued knowledge sharing throughout the association. And so I think that's very exciting as we look to the future. And also looking through the initiatives that have been mentioned, providing a global lens to make things more accessible to the membership for lifelong learning, thinking about a global glossary of terms and concepts that makes it more accessible to the membership across the world, and creates those opportunities for them.
I'd like to ask each of you to talk a little bit about how ACUHO-I is empowering women in the profession and also creating an environment where gender equity and equality and identity is valued. So Pete, do you want to start us off?
Sure. ACUHO-I has a long and proud history of efforts that we've undertaken to support women in the association in leadership roles and involvement with the association as well as the profession. But most recently, particularly as one of the outcomes of our anti-racism task force that did some work last year, we identified that there was a definite gap in opportunities for people that identify as women of Black women. And so in the second cohort of our Leadership Academy this year, we have designated that cohort to be specifically members of the association that identify as Black women. And that academy will be launching in June, and it'll be a year-long opportunity for those women to be able to bond with each other, to meet with mentors and other folks, and to learn a lot about the leadership journey, both within the association and within the profession at large.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about how this initiative is a global initiative?
Absolutely. I think we really look at this as creating opportunities for leadership positions for women in the association, bringing them, creating opportunities so that their voice can be magnified. And so in practical terms, this is involvement of our female colleagues in leadership positions within the Global Initiatives Network, as well as participation on our global webinars that I had mentioned before, really magnifying as much as we can the perspectives of women across the world. And in addition, looking to some of our affiliated organizations, and specifically we have a chapter in South Africa that has recently had a Women in Housing symposium, really focusing on female professionals within the housing accommodation profession. So I think through those ways, we really can kind of shine a light and also bring opportunities where I think that's really needed in our profession.
Well, one of the 4 focus areas that ACUHO-I has is around social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'd like each of you to think about what are the measures and opportunities ACUHO-I is employing to reduce the inequities between different populations and identities across the association. Pete, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I already referenced the Leadership Academy. This current version is going to be our second cohort. The first cohort started a couple years ago, and that was for members of the association who identified as people of color. So, that was an area that we really saw that needed some support within the association, within the profession as well, to provide pathways for leadership opportunities for people of color. And the first cohort of that program was very successful, and we're expecting the second cohort to be just as successful. I also referenced the Anti-Racism Task Force. That group met during the second half of 2020 and made their report to the association very early in 2021. A lot of good information came out of that, and we're now going to be taking 2021 and into 2022 and beyond to follow up on those recommendations with some very concrete ways of providing opportunities for all of our members, but particularly our members of color, as well as looking inside the association and making changes and adjustments as would be appropriate to address those concerns. And this year in particular, taking the lead on that is we have a position on our executive board as the anti-racism director, one of our appointed positions, and Louis Anoa is taking the lead on that, and we are already making progress in that area.
Matt, what are you hearing from our global members? The Global Initiatives Network meets on a regular basis, and they contribute to these efforts. Can you share a little bit about their thinking?
Yes, yeah, we do meet as global initiatives, and it's been interesting as Black Lives Matter has gone on over the past year, and the increased and important focus on the BIPOC community is how it's been experienced and talked about around the world. I think Indigenous populations are very much a part of the conversation, and a prominent part of the conversation in Australia and New Zealand, for example. It's more focused on people of in, say, South Africa, and obviously in the United States and other places. And so it's really talking about how do we support these communities and these professionals throughout the association, and finding ways to do that. And I think, on a basic level, it's really looking at representation and not only who's involved in leadership positions, whose voices are heard, but who's seen.
Thank you on behalf of the 1,000 colleges and universities that are members of ACUHO-I, the more than 17,000 professionals around the world. I would like to thank you for joining us. Please feel free to contact us if you would like more information, and we wish you a good day.